Thank y'all for being here today. As you can tell, I'm not Bab Grant. She has retired after 30 years of dedicated service, over 3 decades, so we owe her a lot. But I've been asked to take her place, and Jeff and Bonnie have been wonderful to help me through this transition. I want to thank Lucy and Bill for helping out today, and also Shirley back there who's taking up money. Ron Stevens, also one of our money changers. He was run out of the temple, and so Jeff was kind enough to give him another gig. So we'll look forward to that. But thank you all very much for being here. We've got, I think, an exciting evening. It should be really a good topic, and I think Jack's going to do a great job. I did want to mention something, Jack. I want to tell you a quick story. The inaugural year of Tupelo Reads, I believe, was Tuesday with Maury. That's right. And Tupelo Community Theater kind of partnered, and they did the play Tuesday with Maury. And I was fortunate enough to be cast in the lead. I played the part of Maury. And so I was talking to one of my buddies a couple weeks after I got the part, and you only have 8 weeks. By the time you go to the door and you see your name and what part you've got, you show up Sunday, they hand you a book, and you got 8 weeks. And there's only 2 people in that play. So there were 80 pages, I think, of lines, and I had at least 40 pages. And so about 2 weeks into it, I had a buddy of mine from Nettleton who asked me to go to lunch. I said, I just can't do it. I said, I got every minute I've got to spend trying to learn these lines. And he said, what are you learning lines for? And I understand he's not much of a reader. He's more of a Field and Stream kind of magazine guy. And so he said, so what play are you doing? And I said, well, Tuesday with Maury. And he said, I've never heard of it. And I said, well, it's about these 2 guys. And he said, there's only 2 people in the play. It's a 2-man play. And he said, just 2 people. I said, yeah. And he said, y'all just talk. And I said, that's right. And it's Tuesday with Maury. I said, yeah. He said, that's got to be really boring. And I said, no, it's really going to be a great screenplay. I said, the playwright's wonderful. It's going to be great. Dialogue's wonderful. And he said, just 2 people. And I said, right. He said, I just don't know about that. It's Tuesday with Maury. He said, so you're playing Maury. I said, yeah. He said, well, who's playing Tuesday? True story. So I've been with Tupelo Reads and been involved with it from the beginning. It's just a wonderful event. And so let's jump right to it. Jack's given me a very short bio, so I'm going to read that, and then I'm going to turn things over to him. Jack Reed Jr. is a lifelong native of Tupelo. He and his wife Lisa have been strong supporters of the Lee County Library, and in 2019 they founded Tupelo Reads, our community-wide reading program. A regular attender at Luncheon with Books, he's been a frequent reviewer over the past 5 years, and this is his first book. Jack, would you join us, please? Thank you.
Thank you. Good to be back. That's actually 2009. I probably miswrote that to Harold with Tupelo Reads, and Lisa has the main oar rowing that boat, so we'll give her credit for that. I am glad to be here. I had this. I'm going to take this off the podium, but if you came in and saw this is the Bible that I got in 1969, spring of '69, and all of these notes have been written in there for the last 50 years, so that's what turned into this. But I'm going to move that a little quicker. Before I start on the book review, I wanted to say a few things that people I appreciate here. I appreciate everybody here for coming, but Betty Cagle, who's a lifelong worker in the field here at the library, was telling me on the way up in the elevator. By the way, Betty doesn't like elevators. She was pretty nervous that it was going to open by the time we got to the 2nd floor, but she was telling me that Marion reminded her that he had been my high school First Methodist Sunday school teacher. So what a nice start I had in listening to people that were really fine people. And Roy Ryan and Doris Roy has also been a Sunday school teacher and friend that I've listened to I've been lucky enough to have, so I really appreciate them both being here. And I did want to say, just as far as the Luncheon with Books crowd goes, that there a couple of people I wanted to just bring up too and mention. Well, Jane Riley, excuse me, another one of my teachers, my 8th grade teacher. You can blame her. We love Jane's class. She had a ping pong table next to her, and everybody wanted to be in her class so we could play ping pong. But I did want to mention Piggy Caldwell and Mary Ann, too, who frequently are attendees at this meeting, and certainly remembering them this week, too. So, and I was thinking about, I really have been coming here for over 40 years to these Luncheon with Books, and I know that because even if one doesn't trust his memory, for those of you who were in this room in April of 1980, I'm not going to ask for hands, I reviewed this book 43 years ago, The Powers That Be, David Halberstam. And look how appreciative this is. This is why we ought to keep reading. Listen to this. This is in 1980. David Halberstam's new book is an extraordinary achievement. It chronicles the stunning rise in power and influence of America's communications empires. It opens our eyes to the domination of government by the media. It takes us behind the scenes and shows us the new shapes of power in America today. It brings us close to the men and women who develop and wield that power now. Tucker Carlson this week, Don Lemon. That was 43 years ago. So I guess that means keep reading, keep reading. The last review I gave was the Destiny and Power, George H.W. Bush, and that was in 2016. That was actually 1 month after my dad passed away, and I looked through my notes today, and it said, please thank everyone for their nice thoughts and letters. And so that was kind of a sweet little memory. But anyway, that was 6 years ago. Since then, I know Lisa's given a review on Leonardo da Vinci since then. So we believe in Luncheon with Books. I guess that's the point of it. All right. So why am I here today, never having on my bucket list compile a book? This annotation collections are numbered by pages and annotations, and they really don't, you can read them one at a time. I have some people that have this book say they read one a day as a devotional. You can read the whole thing in probably 45 minutes and put it back on the shelf, and I can tell Jack I read it. So it's easy to dismiss, or it's easy to kind of savor, I guess. But there are 568 thoughts in this book, or annotations, and number 66 is from 2 Kings, and Elijah said, I pray you, let me inherit a double share of your spirit. And I'd written, can be a father's legacy or a mother's legacy. And I wrote, to try to give your children the things money can't buy: love, compassion, humor, generosity, a free spirit, character, respect for others, kindness, loyalty, courage, and reverence. So that, I guess, in a way explains why this book came about. I didn't know this quote, but I found it in Kirk, my editor, our daughter Kirk, inserted this in the book, and this is Ralph Waldo Emerson. Select and collect all the words and sentences that in all your reading have been to you like the blast of a trumpet out of Shakespeare, Seneca, Moses, John, and Paul. I never read that 50 years ago, but that's actually what's happened here 50 years later. So that's kind of cool. But anyway, how did the book come about? Well, you saw the Bible. Senior year at Vanderbilt, I'd done all my major, minor topics, so I had some electives. Vanderbilt has a divinity school, and their divinity, some of the teachers would teach in the undergraduate school. And so I took a class in Old Testament, and when I get the list of textbooks for that semester, it was probably art history of, Japan, this textbook, science, this textbook, Old Testament, the Revised Standard Version with Apocrypha, of the Bible. So this was my textbook, and like a lot of textbooks, even though I respect anybody who believes you shouldn't write in your Bible, that's the wrong thing to do, I respect that, and I know there are a lot of people that believe that. That just wasn't what I did. I just used it. I remember the first lessons were the book of Job, and so I've got written in my hand 40 years ago, some little notes on Job. So anyway, since I had started doing that, that's the Bible I've used the rest of my life, and I take it to Sunday school classes, lay academies, speeches, sermons certainly, and just would write down something that I wanted to remember. I don't have a very good memory. What did I just say? But Lisa has a great memory, and I can't, she's not around all the time to help me think of things, so I write these things down. And about 5 years ago, after I turned 65, I'm 71, when I turned 65, I thought, really this Bible is the best thing other than, financial contributions to our grandchildren's college fund or these kind of things. That's really the most important thing that I have. And I guess I was egotistical enough to think that I had two children and only one Bible, and they would, fight over it. Now, what if I hadn't done this? What might well have happened? My shelves are full. You take it, Jack. No, Kirk, you take it. You take it. But anyway, I kind of thought, well, maybe they would both like to have it. And so I spent a year, had a New Year's resolution in 2018 to write down all of those annotations, which are over 600 of them, on index cards in my personal hand, and then got Sprint Print to publish that. That was about 270 pages back and front in my personal hand of these index cards. And took it to Sprint Print. I got 5 copies, one for Lisa, Kirk, Jack, me, and our minister. But then some people, Joe Mark, other people that just see me in church writing down all the time and think, he can't be doing his grocery list. I know he doesn't go to the grocery. Lisa does all the grocery shopping. Started seeing that. And I was teaching a couple of Sunday school classes. At the time I was teaching one of kind of young adult couples and one of the oldest, most seasoned members of our church. And in fact, I was teaching the younger class one Sunday, and Dick White, who many of you know, doctor, a good friend of mine, we were team teaching. I told the class that, well, I won't be here next Sunday. I'm going to be teaching the other class with our oldest members of the church. He said, well, you better do a better job of preparing next week. Those folks are studying for finals. But anyway, those classes knew that I was doing this, and so people started asking me for them. So I got a few more. I got about, I think, 11 more copies printed, and people asked for them. But then it just kind of organically grew, and I thought, well, it's kind of a pain going down to Sprint Print and getting these loose leaf notebooks things, and maybe if I can think of a good cause to do with the money. So all the proceeds of it are going to a charitable fund at Create to help people really kind of on the edge of paying their bills or needing to help with their rent or their food or whatever. So I guess what I'm saying is I'm willing to self-promote the book for the cause, not for myself. Dale Butler, who works for our store, I typed those for her. I told her I need to always give her credit for that, and Kirk edited. Kirk also edited Dad's book, and I know Lucy Hibble was saying, she was telling me when I was getting my Coke that how much she enjoyed Dad's book, and Kirk said, his book was called A Time to Speak, which was a collection of his speeches throughout his career, and that was kind of based on John Grisham's A Time to Kill, which got us in the bookstore business in 1989 when we were lucky enough to be one of 5 bookstores in America that he came to, and so we kind of had that theme, A Time to Kill, A Time to Speak, and so I decided this, A Time to Listen, the building blocks of one man's personal theology and philosophy. Kirk said, Dad, you could have titled yours what I would have said if I could have gotten the floor in our family meetings. Catherine may appreciate that, and Lisa certainly. But anyway, so A Time to Listen. So basically, these are just the things that I thought were worth remembering, that I wanted to remember myself. So I thought I'd just kind of hit some of them today, and then we can have some time for questions or comments, or we can certainly go home early. Nobody ever minds that. I will say that the book is offered with humility, and I had a good friend of mine read it goes to a different church and came up to me one day at the Kiwanis Club and was really challenging one of the comments in here. And I said, this was for me to consider. And so anybody, same thing. I'm not proselytizing. I'm not trying to convince anybody. These are just things that were important to me that I wanted to pass on. So, I told him, I said, let's have lunch sometime, and I'll be glad to tell you why I thought that was important, but I'm not trying to talk you into whatever you didn't think was an important thing to remember. And I will say that I taught Lloyd Gray, who many of you know, who was a publisher on paper here, read the book and was really interested in it, and asked me. He was in charge of programs at the Meridian Rotary Club this year, so he invited me to come down to Meridian. So last month I went to the Meridian Rotary Club and spoke about the book, and I told him when I stood up, I said, you know what, I said, this, no matter what happens 30 minutes from now, I'm treating this experience, Lloyd, with humility, because if some of you want one of the books and want to make a contribution to the Create Foundation, I said, I will be humbled that you think of, and if 30 minutes from now y'all race out here and say, good guys, the worst program we've ever had, that will also be humbling to me. So, so I feel kind of the same way today. I appreciate Harold asking me. I'll be humbled either way. The first, I did kind of intentionally pick the first entry, since it is my personal mission statement. And interestingly, I heard this from kind of a traveling minister named Tony Campello, and I heard it at St. Paul's Methodist Church when he came to St. Paul's to speak, a couple of decades ago at least. So anyway, and it is, God wants life to be a party. It's just up to us to make sure everyone's invited. Party could be banquet, kind of a little more casual talk about, but that from the Bible, and that's what I've tried to do in my life, just make sure everybody's invited. The people in here, we all, so lucky in so many ways. We also have had our trials in so many ways too, and we do, but anyway, so that's number one. At the end of the talk, I'll read you the last one, and in between, y'all can take a nap now for the next 10 minutes. So if you want the cliff notes, that's half of them. Some of the things in here are comforting, which I appreciate. I have had, and it really is humbling, but I'm glad that it's been that way. I've had several people, we've sold, donated over 650 of these already in Tupelo and around people. Somebody bought 20 copies for all of their children and grandchildren in Corinth. So it's just interesting kind of how this has gone out on the waters. But a lot of these things are comforting. And on page 20, number 86 is the 23rd Psalm. And I wrote, this psalm inspired the sublime music, My Shepherd Will Supply My Needs, which contains this most poignant verse, no more a stranger or a guest, but like a child at home. Close quote. What more comforting image, both to me as a child in our home growing up, or as a parent with Lisa welcoming Kirk and Jack and their families back home. If I have a sequel, though, I'm going to write this one, which is another way of thinking about this, but wouldn't make me tear up as much. This was at if anybody listens to the Gospel Train on XM 62 on Sunday mornings from 8 to 12, that's on Bluegrass Junction, the Sirius XM Bluegrass station. And every Sunday morning they have called the Gospel Train, and it's all gospel music. And this is maybe 3 months ago or something, I heard this song, which I thought was just perfect. I bet you'll agree with it. It said, the name of it was, God Has My Picture on His Refrigerator Door. Isn't that sweet? I mean, that's the Bible almost right there. That's half of the Bible. God has my picture on His refrigerator door. I mean, that's Roy, that's a whole Sunday school lesson right there. So if I have a sequel, I'm going to put that one in there. There's also practical advice in here, page 39, number 121. And again, I was talking to this is kind of serious actually, but I was talking to a man who was telling me about the book, and he had been been a Catholic growing up and had a difficult experience. His brother had been abused by one of the priests, and he said, our family just doesn't believe in church anymore. We think religion's not worth it. And but we were talking about things, and he said, but we were talking about things in this book, and I said, a lot of these are just universal truths. They're not really, yes, there's a lot of Methodist, I guess, theology, but it's really Christian, and it really is, at best, it's, like I said, a lot of it's just philosophy that I think is important. So it's not proselytizing, but this was, this one about practical advice says, this is Proverbs 12:16, the vexation of a fool is known at once, but the prudent man ignores an insult. Those Proverbs, they're not particularly, obviously they're not Methodist Proverbs. I don't think John Wesley was around when Proverbs was being written, but anyway, I was going to say my father, Catherine's father, Lisa's father-in-law, your friend, he was the best person I knew at really letting criticism roll off his back and forgetting things. For our family, unfortunately, my mother wasn't very good at that, so there were some grudges that were held. But anyway, but Dad was great about that, and I try to be better about that. But he spoke once when he was running for mayor to the Greenwood Voters League. He asked to speak to him. They asked him, why do you want to come over here? You're a white Republican. We're an all-black Greenwood Activist Voters League, and they thought kind of he was suspicious, they were suspicious of why he wanted to do. He said, well, I want you all to get to know me. I want you to know my record in civil rights in the 60s. I want your vote. I want you to think I'm the best person for the job. Well, it just didn't go that well. He went on, he had a good sense of humor. He cracked some jokes and nobody laughed. He would talk about, keeping the public schools open, big deal. Why shouldn't they be? I mean, really. And at the end of the speech, he said, thank you for letting me speak. It's always good to be among friends, even if they're not mine. So he was pretty good at ignoring things. There's some humor in here, particularly for our family. A couple of these that you all will get a kick out of. Those of you who ever shop at Reads and know our men's manager for the last 48 years, John Rush. This is Isaiah 35. Then the eyes of the blind shall be opened, the thirsty grounds, springs of water, the grass shall become the reeds and the rushes. And I said, nice that John Rush and his family and our family are together even in biblical times. And then Isaiah 42:3, a bruised reed I will not break. And I told Kirk and Jack, a happy assurance, at least for our family. So there's some kind of personal humor in there. There's some good pithy short verses that are easy to remember at special times. One of my, if not maybe my favorite verse in the Bible is Micah 6:8. I wrote one of the great verses of the Bible. He has showed you, O man, what is good and what does the Lord require of you, but to do justice, love kindness, and walk humbly with your God. And I wrote, in this simple sentence, the prophet sums up the legal, ethical, and spiritual requirements of religion. Roy, you're nodding there. I bet you agree with that. Then just something simple. One on page 109, Mother Teresa. See, I don't just quote, certainly not just Methodists in here, but this was from Mother Teresa. Smile at the people you live with. You think Mother Teresa is a saint, what can how much theology can I get from her? And she says, smile at the people you live with. I mean, so some simple things like that. Some of the philosophical things that have nothing to do with religion that were important to me, I jotted down here just that were, they came to me when I was listening to sermons and things, I guess. But on page 9, something that I heard at Camp Mondamin when I was a boy, between ages 11 and 14, and it's ships are safe in the harbor, but that's not what they were built for. Ships are safe in the harbor, but that's not what they were built for. And actually, I did use that verse when I decided to put myself up for a candidate for mayor. I thought, well, maybe, give it a shot. I mean, it wasn't on my bucket list, but maybe this is something I could contribute. And so I actually remembered that verse is to help me. So I don't know if that will help Kirk and Jack. Probably, I doubt they'll run for mayor, but they might do something else that they're interested in. I will say, this is interesting too, though, again, just things that have been personally helpful to me. After I was mayor, I wrote this verse in the first week I got there. I put this is on page 126, Philippians 4:8, and I wrote this verse down and put it in my desk in the mayor's office so that it would be handy for me to remember when I needed it. And it says, I said I kept this in my desk for 4 years I served as mayor. Finally, brethren, whatever is true, whatever is honorable, whatever is just, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is gracious, if there is any excellence, if there is anything worthy of praise, think about these things. So, y'all didn't get a chance to vote me out because I retired from mayor. Not impeached, not indicted. That's a low bar, I realize, but I did walk out on my own, not in chains. So y'all didn't give me a verdict on that, but at least y'all know that was something I was aspiring to, whether I was able to achieve it or not. I will say this, I'm a big proponent of separation of church and state. That's another thing. I'm really not trying to, form and I'm going to be careful here. I'm sure that this may be a little different, but the purpose of this was not to help form a Christian nation. This is just some things that are important to me. I'm even, and I really have to be careful about saying this, but I think we have to be a little careful. These huge crosses that are at every town, coming through. I think I respect anybody that. In fact, I contributed $100 to the one in Saltillo. A good close friend of ours from Saltillo who was helping our ball. Anyway, asked me to done that very, sincerely, and I said, well, if that's important to you, I'll do it. But to me, seeing the United Way thermometer full, that's as good a way to show what kind of city we are, as much as that perhaps. But anyway, that's just my point of view. No charge, and I will be out of here just right after we finish speaking. Page 69. This was I spent a lot of time on this one with the Rotary Club because they were friends, and we were all friends here. But I thought this was we travel through reading. You can travel to Spain, you can travel to Norway through reading. You can also travel just by reading new ideas. The last Tupelo Reads book, that was a new idea I'd read. Didn't know anything about epigenetics at all, but gave me something to think about. And this was a verse a sermon. I think Larry Goodpastor, who's now Bishop Goodpastor. I mean, his family must have been in ministry a long time. Goodpastor, Lisa and I were talking about that. It's kind of like what was the book, Lisa? We were talking about the Middle Ages. Tom Builder and, what was it?
Pillars of the Earth.
Pillars of the Earth. The old Pillars of Earth, that back when people's last name were, Jack Blacksmith, whatever. So Larry Goodpastor. But anyway, this was the story of the paralytic being carried to Jesus by his four friends. And I guess just off the top of my head, I always thought about this. Well, this was just another way, of Jesus healing a paralytic. But this is what Larry said. I'll read the verse to you, just to help you remember it. And many were gathered together so that there was no room for them, not even about the door. And Jesus was preaching the word to them. And they came bringing to him a paralytic, carried by four men. And when they could not get near him because of the crowd, they removed the roof above him. And when they had made an opening, they let him down, which the paralytic lay. And when Jesus saw their faith, he said to the paralytic, "My son, your sins are forgiven. Rise up, take your pallet, and go home." And Larry said, the four friends are the real heroes of this story. Their faith is marked by creativity and compassion, ingenuity, and persistence. Their faith is marked by creativity, compassion, ingenuity, and persistence. I thought that was a wonderful way to take a fresh look at that story and then just realize we are the hands and feet of God. We're if it's going to be done when we're around, it's up to us. Page 50 is about light, which there are a lot of entries in here about light. I guess that metaphor speaks to me. This is one, Matthew, you are the light of the world. You all know that if you don't read the Bible, if you saw Godspell, you know that. This is Robert Louis Stevenson telling this story. He said, in London, when the streets were lit with oil lamps, a father asked his young son, who was staring out the window, "What are you looking at?" And the boy answered, "I'm watching a man make holes in the darkness." Jesus said, "Let your light so shine before men that they may see your good works and give glory to your Father in heaven." The image of our sanctuary at Christmas Eve candlelight service calls to mind to me just how meaningful that is. On a lighter note, after one of those candlelight services, this was when I was mayor. Before the service, I had a lady come up to me and said, "Jack, I would love for you to meet my adult daughter. She lives up in Minnesota now." And I said, "Well, I would love to. Well, I'll see you after." So, you come out of that candlelight service, and the candles are lit one by one. The sanctuary is lit. I mean, it's just real sweet, heart tug kind of Christmas thing. You're feeling really good and come out. And so I look for her. She looks for me, and they come over, and she says, "Honey, I want you to meet our mayor, Mayor Jack Daniels." Read. And that's that's the best introduction really I've ever had probably. But to try to make her feel better, I said, "Well, either my service is so bad it makes you drink, or you're trying to get home and put that in the eggnog as soon as we get out of here." But anyway, let's see, page 128, 482. Then this is just kind of a summary of my theology, or lack thereof maybe, but I said, "I am more interested in what your religion makes you do than what it makes you believe." I'm more interested in what your religion makes you do than what it makes you believe. Not that beliefs are unimportant, but that's just something that somebody said that I thought was helpful. All right, we're kind of moving along. I'll do a couple more. As we grow older, and I guess I've got to admit it somehow, since I saw the first review I did here was 43 years ago, and I guess I'm still not 29 years old, although I feel about 29 years old. This was Cliff Davis, who is quoted in here more than anybody else. He was probably the smartest theologian minister I've ever been lucky enough to hear in our church, and he also had an adult Sunday school class, so I got to hear him every Sunday in Sunday school and then in the sermon, so I got a double dose of Cliff Davis. But he said, as we grow older, there are three areas of our life we need to keep in mind. Number one, keep active. And of course, y'all are all here. Take care of your body. You've got to have it to live abundantly. Exercise, eat right, go to the doctor, do physical work. Second, nourish the mind. And again, here we are. Use it. Always be a reader. Jeff, always be a reader, Lee County Library. And a thinker and a writer. Number three, cultivate your spirit with meditation, worship, spiritual thinking, and reading the Bible. Cliff Davis. So that's kind of the balanced life. I really believe that the balanced life, you need to, if you ever read the book, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, which is a great kind of textbook on life, one of the things he said, which I started doing after I went to this class probably 40 years ago too, was he said, you can't do everything you need to do in one day, and Ben and I talk about this even at the store. He said, but I look at weeks and months, and he said, if you look at your priorities, if they're family and work and friends or golf or fishing or United Way or whatever, you can't do all those in a day, but schedule in, if you can, in a week. So you've at least touched that, maybe church on Sunday. Write that down. That may be what that is. But anyway, I still do that. I've done that every week, since then. I think that balanced life is helpful. Part of this is challenging our own churches, and that's why I said some of these things some of you may disagree with. And I hope that you won't discount some of these great annotations that other people have said, even if you disagree with something I have in here, because there are a lot of good things in here that I just, most of the things are things that I heard, not that I came up with. But this was something in the Methodist Church that I think applies maybe to well, it applies every day, but, and I don't know who said this, but I wrote it down. It says, if the church is not a home for all, then it is not a home at all. That's pretty good. And let's see, maybe this is the next to last one. There's a guy named John Fling in South Carolina that I heard on a Charles Kuralt tape once. Y'all remember Charles Kuralt? What a wonderful Southern writer. Some people think that he was being a bigamist cut into his reputation. That's up for you to decide. But Lisa and I kind of have a look at that. But anyway, John Fling was a man that worked for a Ford dealership in South Carolina, and Charles Kuralt just followed me. He just basically just kept doing good in the poor part of town. He one day a guy came up to him and needed a coat. It was cold. He took off his coat and gave it to him. Somebody else needed some socks. He took off his socks and gave it to him. One of the guys that was working with him in the ministry said, "John, we got to get out of here. You know, I don't want to walk around you with a naked friend around town." But anyway, what John Fling said, which I have always remembered. In fact, after I heard this, I called John Fling and I just told him, found out his number at this Ford dealership, and just I want to send you some money. They said he had a little fund or something. I said, I want to thank you for your example. I want to send you some money, and we had a nice little talk. But this is what he told Charles Kuralt. He said, God's kingdom can be here now when good is done now. He said, I don't believe we have to wait to get to heaven to see a little of God's kingdom right here on earth right now. So that was good. That was good stuff. And then there's another way. Another thing. If I have a sequel, maybe I'll put this in here too. But after I heard that, I started paying attention to just the rote memorization of the Lord's Prayer, and I've started. Although you can't really do it in the church and keep up with everybody else who's zipping along, but where it says, "Thy kingdom come on earth," and try to pause there for a minute before you just quickly go, "As it is in heaven." But the kingdom come on earth. I mean, that's kind of our that's our responsibility. And then another thing I think I was going to put in the sequel was, and this was I'm not sure, I can't remember who inspired this, but the prayer, "Dear God, help me," and we've all prayed that a lot. But this thought came to me too. Dear God, help me help you. All right. That, I'm going to read you the last one now, and then if you have any questions or comments, I'm glad to answer them if I can. But this is the last entry, number 568. If you get this far, you can just skip to the back if you want to. This is part of a marriage commission that you hear a lot. We hear, "To those to whom love is a stranger, may they find a generous friend in you." May that commission apply to me and to you. Amen. Thank you. If anybody would like any of these, we have them at the bookstore. Ben or Lori has them here. They're, again, not 100% of the money goes to this little fund at CREA, but they're $15 for a paperback, $25 for a hardback. If you don't have it, just take one, and we're on the honor system if you want it. Harold, any questions, any thoughts, anybody? Comments?
Great job.
Harold, thank you. Thank you very much. See y'all. Thank you.
Jack, thank you for that. And, as you were speaking, I was just thinking, when you do something like that, it sort of puts you in a vulnerable position. So thank you for your courage, not only for writing it, but sharing with us with that today. I did want to mention one thing before we close, just kind of catch you up on where we are in the future in terms of our speakers. Next month, we're going to have Randy McCoy, Dr. McCoy, and he'll be talking to us about Mike Leach's book, the late Mike Leach at Mississippi State. He wrote a book called Geronimo, and it seems that Mike Leach is an expert on Native American Indians, and especially on Geronimo, so that should be interesting. In June, We have Francis Williams. Dr. Williams will be talking to us about the Ron Chernow book, Grant. And, he also wrote the J.P. Morgan book, Alexander Hamilton. There's a couple others, I can't think of them, but great author. And I think you've probably heard Frances before. She'll do a wonderful job. She's quite a scholar. And then in July, Steve Holland will be doing Robert Kayak's book, 60, A Year of Sports, Race, and Politics. I read that book, wonderful book. I'm a state guy, but when I read that book, there was a lot about Robert Kayak I didn't know. He had an incredible life, and I think Steve is even going to see if he can bring him to that meeting if he can, and so we certainly look forward to that. And then August we have Joed Morris, The Devil Walks at Midnight. That's a book by Joed Morris, and we look forward to that. And then if you have any ideas about authors or books, please see me, and we'll see what we can do. So thank you all for being here today, and thank you, Jack.